So obviously the news broke kind of early last week, or at least on the weekend, that Black Bolt and White Flare are going to be underprinted. Now, again, when it comes to sources, unless it's Pokemon quite clearly saying this is going to happen, I believe there is a kind of a very reputable source that is saying this. So now the kind of, almost the word is wildfire. It has gone everywhere. Everybody is kind of panicking on the fact that, do we ever get a white flare and black bolt? Does it happen? Do we see the product, or is it just going to be one of them myths that you try and get and it just doesn't happen? Now, the big question you're always going to have is, do you open it now, or do you try and get some? Do you buy it at market price? Do you try and get it as in quantities of whatever? And arguably, I think when it comes to a set like this, personally, I haven't been around. I believe the last set that was kind of like this, I want to say someone said it was Roaring Skies. Again, I'm not going to act like I know what it was like there, but according to, I think it was someone on TikTok, basically said that basically it was a product that was just outrageously underprinted. It was through the moon, all the products were crazy, and then eventually they did print it. We got some more news saying that basically anything Surgeon Sparks and below is not being reprinted again. Whether that is true, whether they are fully finished to focus on some of the more later sets, again, I could kind of understand. I think it is an interesting point of view, and I think the one thing that you've always got to remember when it comes to a product like this, a hobby like this, sets like this, is that it doesn't revolve around a specific timer every single time. People always say that sets have a lifespan of 3 to 4 years before it stops being reprinted. Yes, it might have that as a guideline. You might think that Pokemon in the normal hype period, 3 years is a perfect time for a Prismatic to go from A to B to C to finish. Then the same for a Darkness Ablaze, for a Rebel Clash. It's A to B to C, done. You get the initial hype, everybody buys like the initial bit, then you've got B, you've kind of got your trade-in, you've got your buying of little packs, maybe you get them from your convenience store, from a Smith's Toys, a Walmart, what have you, and then C is kind of everybody's now got enough of it, we've already gone to the next set, and then it's just finished. The reprint is, the end of the printing is basically people buying the boxes for it to go up in price because it's not being printed again. So that is understandable that can happen at any point. It could just be a year. It could be that the set was so horrendously undersold that there was just no point having it. Now, obviously, we know for Pokemon at the minute, if we look at what sets are kind of out from Scarlet and Violet Base, Temporal Forces, Paldea Evolved, Twilight, Stellar Crown, like they're not, I wouldn't say any of them are horrendously bad. I'd say there's definitely a tier list in there, but I'd say realistically, you got some of the better sets going on there, to be fair, especially with the introduction of all of these illustration rares. I know we had them towards the latter end of the Sword and Shield in terms of the abundance of them, but most definitely they've taken that and absolutely ran with it. Hence why Black Bolt and White Flare is an interesting one to say the least, with the 160 plus illustrations, which is going to be interesting in itself. And it's why I would say if you're ever looking in the hobbies, I wouldn't necessarily panic too much with it. As much as you're going to get a lot of hype people that are going to say, go and buy the product, go and do this. And if it's not at your price, it's not at your price. I think that is the biggest thing that I can say when it comes to products, when it comes to sets, is that even if you can't afford the product, that is fine. The FOMO of trying to collect everything is fine that you don't. If you want to change to a Japanese printing because it's slightly cheaper, even heck, go into Korean or Chinese and going further down the prospective list of what it is, they are still the same artworks. Half of them are still the exact same sets. So it's not even if you're getting anything different, it is just literally the language. And to be honest, how many people are truly reading the cards? I'm a big collector of the cards. I don't necessarily play the game massively. I play it on Pocket and I've dabbled a little bit, but I'm most definitely not one that's going to go crazy in the game. So realistically, I'm looking at the actual artwork of it. I could happily turn into the Japanese sets. Now, my personal favorite is more into the vintage, so that is kind of just an area that I personally go into. When it comes to something like this, I'd be more than happy to spend a fraction of it in German if I needed to. Whatever the lowest language of cards is, I'd much happier do that and try and get the cards in that way, and it'd be more affordable. real. That is what this hobby is missing out on. It is not a get rich quick scheme, which I think is what a lot of people are going into. And it's hard to say, because I will sit here as a collector and say, I will always like to try and complete the sets. That's my personal favourite thing to do. At the minute, it's just completing the normal set. Then I'll try and go for the illustration rares as and when, but it's going to have to be one at a time realistically. But there's definitely a side of me that does like to see the value of stuff going up. I like that we packed the Surgeon Sparks Pikachu, and we can see the value of a considerable amount. Definitely dropped since then, but it's nice to see a value of it, that it is worth some money because you do put some money into it, but it's not everything. The whole point of the hobby is to collect. Now, naturally, because of market prices, it is quite expensive, but if you do try and go for restocks, if you look for as much retail as possible, there is stuff out there. Not a crazy amount, but there is stuff most definitely. And I would say with the black and white set, the one thing that I can imagine that will happen is, yes, maybe we get to the launch day in June or July, whenever it is, and there is nothing. And I can imagine there's going to be very little, if anything. If you want to stay in front of a Smith's at 7 a.m., then yes, that will allow you to potentially get one item of the product, but it's not going to be that you're going to get a crazy amount with all of these illustration rares. We're going to be nowhere near completing the set with the product that's going to be available. But there is obviously the chance that it does get reprinted and reprinted. We are waiting for Pokemon to completely go print to demand on some of these sets. Could this be the first in the future? I wouldn't be able to speculate to say yes, it would be. But I can imagine with what they're doing, with the fact that it is so many illustration rares, like this is an unheard of number. It's definitely not something that you couldn't see that was in the realms, but it's definitely a crazy one to make sure that they get right. So there'll be plans and almost situations in place that they know this is going to be one of the most hyped sets going. This is going to be completely crazy when it comes to products, scalping, opening, keeping sealed. This is just going to have everything at a times 50. So it will be interesting to see where we go with it. If it is an undervalued set, don't panic with it. You will be able to get something. It will go back on the market, and it will be reprinted. At least there will be printing consistently with something like this. They are not going to do one print run of this and that is it, because it is 160 plus illustration rate. They just can't just have one printed for that. It would be virtually impossible. Now we've seen Surgeon Sparks boxes come on the shelves. I've seen some Twilight now. Heck, I've seen some base set ETB Scarlet and Violets come about. If they're coming about right now and people didn't think that was going to happen, this will as well. The only thing that you've got to be bearing in mind is that a lot of people will be looking for it. So it isn't necessarily that it's going to be completely available, but if you do look in the right places at the right times, it should be there for you. But let me know your thoughts on it. It's always interesting to get everybody's feedback with it. I must admit, it's just an interesting place to be in with a hobby, and I'm really looking forward to Destined Rivals, to be honest. The overshadow of this black and white is interesting. We will be looking at some Destined Rivals as it does come out and seeing some price lists for it. But for now, make sure you like and subscribe. Catch you all for the next one. Peace.